Hello everyone, welcome to this week's video. Today we're going to start talking about the basics of story writing. Now, as you'll remember, we've already talked a little bit about the story sequence chart, and so if you want, you can refer back to that and take a look at that video again just to get another quick idea of exactly what a story sequence chart is, how it works, because we're going to use similar parts but put them on a slightly different chart this time. Now, this is known as a plot diagram, and it's something that writers use often, and it's kind of a way to visualize how a story works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the parts of a story, because there are 5 parts that we need to be aware of when we're writing, and also how this relates to the story sequence chart that we've talked about before. So to start off, as you can see, it looks like a mountain. We've got a flat bit, we've got this rising part that kind of looks jagged. We have the very pinnacle at the very top, then it kind of falls back down and comes flat again. This is kind of how a story looks if you were to chart out the excitement and the tension. When you start off, a story is kind of flat. You're just getting introduced to what's going on, and this part is called the exposition. Exposition. The exposition is the part that tells us about the setting and the characters, just like the first bit of our story sequence chart. So this is all about setting and introducing characters. So this is where you'd introduce your protagonist, probably your antagonist, unless that's a little bit later on, where you'd introduce other characters that are important to the protagonist. So that's what happens there in the exposition. This is part 1. Part 1 of our story. Now, after the exposition, and you've told everybody, okay, the setting is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and our characters are Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and all of them. What you do is you go into this part, which is called the rising action. Let's go ahead and write that down. Rising action. This is part 2 of a story. Oh, there we go. Now, the rising action starts bringing the tension up. Things start getting exciting. This is probably, if you were to take Star Wars as an example again, this is probably where Luke finds the droids, where things start getting exciting. He's not just a moisture farmer anymore. Something interesting has happened. On our story sequence chart, this is also where you have the conflicts. You're going to introduce conflicts here. And it's also where the plot mostly happens. Let's see. Now, as you can see, there are these jagged looks here. That's because if you think about pretty much any story you've read, especially if it's longer, there's a point where the action gets intense and then things kind of drop off and it's okay for a little bit, and then things get more intense and it calms down. So for instance, they find the droids and R2-D2 runs away, they meet Ben Kenobi. Everything's okay for a little bit. Then they go back to the moisture farm and find that Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are dead. They meet Han Solo. They escape the planet. Escaping the planet would be a downward slope. It kind of looks like that. And it's just kind of a visualization to give you an idea of what it looks like. Have the action constantly going up, coming down a little bit, but going up more every time. Things have to get more and more tense in a story. It has to be more conflict, more problems. Things can't work out well because we got to rise up to this part, this pinnacle up here, which is our climax. Now, the climax is extremely important. This is part 3. It actually is a part unto itself. And this is basically what the story all is building up to. You're introduced to the characters here. You're shown the plot and the rising action, the conflicts here, because it all leads us to this climax, this big moment when something changes, when some giant decision is made. It's when the dogfight happens and they're trying to blow up the Death Star and they don't know if they're going to succeed. In other stories, it might be where if it's a medieval story, it might be where there's the giant sword fight, and you're not sure who's going to win. You're not sure if it's going to be your protagonist, or if it's going to be that antagonist. You're not sure if the princess is going to be saved. You're not sure what's going to happen. It's the big moment, the moment you've been waiting for. Now, after the climax, after this big moment has happened, it starts going back down again. This is called the falling action. It's part 4 of our story. Now, falling action doesn't really have a position in the story sequence chart, but it's very important because it's kind of what starts drawing things back down. And they're the events that lead to part 5, which is the resolution. Part 5. So these things are like, in Star Wars, for example, the falling action would be they come home safely to the rebel base after the explosion. This would probably be where maybe Han Solo has a little bit of a change of heart, and Luke kind of realizes that he's brave, he can be a hero. And then it leads us down to the resolution. These kind of tie in together, so that's probably why we don't have it on the story sequence chart. But just to show you, there is this falling action because at some point you have to bring the excitement level down and down to our resolution, which you'll notice is at about the same level as the exposition at the very beginning. In the resolution, that's where you talk about the resolution, of course. And also, this is where you would introduce the themes. What was this story about? What were you trying to tell your audience? So, this is basically a plot diagram and how it works, and of course how it relates to the story that we've been talking about, Star Wars Episode 4. So, we will talk more about this in class, and if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will see you